Hi, welcome back to the Live More with Rae show, where living more and fearing less is our motto. Tonight, we are so excited to have you as our guest. However, I want you to sit back and take some notes. Maybe you're sitting and wondering what we're going to have on the show tonight, or who we're going to have on the show tonight. I have a young lady that is so serious about doing her life purpose, that her life purpose has touched millions of people's lives. And why do I say millions? Because you know the whole saying is you're 6 people away from separation, 6 degrees of separation from someone that you want to know. A lot of times in life when we go through things, we're touching lives of other people that we really are not sure we're touching them. So tonight, Michelle Labayen is with us. She is an attorney out of Newark, and she does bankruptcy, she does foreclosures, and she also does student loan debt demolish. I call it debt demolish. She's a debt demolisher. Anyway, we're going to laugh about that in a minute. But, you know, on a very serious note, a lot of times we truly have our hearts in the right place, and we want to help, and we want to do well, and we want to get this whole thing on life correct. And we do things like go to college in hopes that we can become the doctor or the lawyer or the Indian chief that we've always dreamed, or the author or the journalist or the scientist or the inventor. And we buy houses that we want our families to come and live, and there's just all this joy. And really our dreams are built on things that are true. However, we find ourselves in situations in life where we're struggling to keep the dream alive. And we struggle from a perspective of loss of job, death in the family, not enough income, underemployed, and just student debts. So tonight, Michelle is going to speak with us about something that's very close to her heart and very close to my heart. I wish I would have known her a couple of years ago. But it's about student debt. What would you say, just off the top of your head, is the amount of indebtedness in the country?
For student loans in particular, it's over $1.4 trillion of student loan debt, which is more than mortgages and credit cards combined for everyone in the country.
What is going to happen if we don't do something about this situation?
The millennials now are going to be stuck in a perpetual cycle of paying too much interest, not moving forward in their life like they would want to. Mm-hmm. They won't be able to purchase homes. They won't be able to move forward being in relationships with others and growing a family because they won't have the economic stability to afford to be able to do that because of the overburdensome of the student loans. And the student loans not only are a huge debt, but they have a lot of legal power behind them. They have legal power to garnish, to sue, to revoke licenses. In some states, student loans can revoke your professional license. So if you're a dentist, a doctor, an architect, a nurse, and if you default on your student loans, some states are taking your license, your ability to earn an income away from you.
So, and I look shocked, but I'm not, and I'll tell you why. I was on the phone call with someone for my son's student loan, and the guy said to me, he says, "Do you want your son to ever drive a car?" And I was like, "What does that mean?" He was like, "We'll make sure he'll never buy a car." And I was like, what? I was like, let me hang up because you sound kind of spooky right now. But the truth of the matter is, it's almost like lockdown. Your arms are locked, your hands are locked, your feet are like, so what do we do? Like, what do we do?
Correct. I mean, the very definition of peonage is that your future income doesn't belong to you. So if your future income doesn't belong to you, you are in fact enslaved in this cycle of a perpetual repayment of interest that gets amortized over 20 years and can change depending on who's ever in the White House. So the change that you need to do is to realize that you don't have to necessarily go down this track of a 20-year repayment, not knowing who you're repaying, what you're repaying, and who is even the owner of your debt going forward. So the first thing you need to do is go on to your FAFSA website if you have a Department of Education loan. Go find your private loan that you paid off for that you can go back to your college, or that you're paying, go back to your college, ask for those student loan documents that you signed, and or some of these student loan servicers are actually trading on the stock exchange. There's ways that you can find where your student loan debt is and then hold them to right to confirm that they have everything required to make you pay this debt.
That sounds like a new career. That really, because you know what? That first of all, to start asking those questions, you know, people are going to start running, scattering. You know, they're going to start putting you off, call back, don't know who to ask, right. That kind of thing. We mentioned, and you were on the show before, we mentioned, we started talking about the QWR, which is the qualified written request, right?
Correct, the qualified written request.
Right, and that's something that you get with the 6 months of, after 6 months of being out of college, correct?
Well, 6 months out of college, they're going to ask for repayment. And you want to confirm that you know who you're repaying and why. So a QWR has usually been used in the foreclosure or the mortgage setting under different laws and rules. But it's the same idea that you have the right to know who you are paying and how much you're paying. So a qualified written request can be made to any secured debt. It could be made for your car if you don't know who your servicer or your owner is for your car. But it's simple rules and simple questions that you ask. Who is the holder of my note? Who is the servicer? What are the interest rates? Provide proof that you have my original document. Provide proof that you have my original signature. Provide an accounting of all of the funds that I have sent to you in the last X amount of years or months. Right. So these are things, simple question statements that you can write, and we help provide for our clients so they can ask these questions of their servicing.
Yeah, and you know, you're here. This is your show tonight. Where would you like to go? What questions would you like to answer tonight?
I guess one of the first questions that I would like to talk about is student loan discharge through bankruptcy, because there is so much misinformation about the dischargeability of student loan and bankruptcy.
Okay.
So the reason why I say it's misinformation, because most people, and I would even dare say lawyers, will say student loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy, right. And that is not true. Going back to the 1970s, 80s, student loans were always a dischargeable debt. It's only recently, back in the 90s, where student loans bit by bit were being carved out to be non-dischargeable. So this is quite a recent event where people are understanding that student loans are non-dischargeable, because at one point they were.
Okay.
So the way student loans become dischargeable is through an adversary proceeding. So an adversary proceeding in your bankruptcy case, either a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, can be filed. And an adversary proceeding is basically a complaint. You would like to say, I want you to prove that you have my student loan debt, or I don't believe you have my student loan debt, or I don't believe the debt that you have is a qualified student loan debt that's protected or unprotected in the bankruptcy code. So being able to file this adversary proceeding is the first step that you could have in the bankruptcy court to either show, again, it's not a student loan debt, or you should have your student loan debt discharged because it's an undue hardship.
You know, you're using terms and terminology that people, many cultures just shy away from. You know, bankruptcy. You did something wrong. You know, it's like it's a taboo. It's why are you doing that, or right. You know, that kind of thing. And a lot of times, misinformation has gone through for that as well. You know, why would someone go bankrupt? Maybe
Correct.
you can answer that question to help
yes.
help everyone out here. Yeah.
Sure. Bankruptcy is everyone's right. It's been our right for over 200 years, the right to file bankruptcy. That means if you ever saw a Charles Dickens Christmas Carol and there was something called a debtor's prison,
Right.
that's where people would go and do meaningless tasks just because they owed a debt. The founding fathers said, we don't want to have debtor's prisons in this country. So bankruptcy is our absolute right to have a fresh start. And speaking of mistruths, I think that the credit card companies and the banks have cast such a horrible shadow on bankruptcy that people are afraid to take advantage of their right to relieve themselves of this incredible amount of debt that they carry. And this debt, it breaks up families. It has people strain their health, their emotional health, their spiritual health going forwards.
Right. Kill themselves.
Depression.
Yeah.
All of this for the fear that they can't pay their debt when they could go into bankruptcy court and be forgiven of their debt. Bankruptcy court is called a court of protection for a reason. It's protecting you from your creditors. And this protection makes you, when you get rid of your debt, a better person, a better mother, a better daughter, a better worker, a better wife, because you're not constantly thinking and worrying about, how am I going to pay that bill? How am I going to pay that bill?
Right. And we definitely know we have people that abuse systems, right? Okay.
Yes.
But however, there are some people that really would benefit
Correct.
from doing some type of bankruptcy. May it be
Absolutely.
a 7 or a 13 or an 11.
Sure,
right?
there's different chapters
Right.
for each person.
Right. So that being the case, if someone is deciding that they've had all of this onslaught of debt, especially student loan, they would have an advocacy period that goes through the bankruptcy. Is that what you said
Sure.
earlier?
So in either a Chapter 7 or in a Chapter 13, though a Chapter 13 is preferable because you have a longer amount of time and you have other rights that allow you to challenge a student loan. So either in a 7 or a 13, you can file a complaint in your bankruptcy case and you can say, I cannot afford to pay my student loan debt because I can't afford to pay for my ordinary and necessary expenses.
Right.
So if you can't pay for your car, your rent, your food, your transportation, your kids' lunch, all these other
Right.
things, because you have a student loan bill, then there's a problem. Or if you can't pay for one of those things because you have a student loan debt, then you apply to the court and say, I cannot afford my necessary expenses, so please discharge my student loan debt as an undue hardship.
And they'll do it?
Well, it's an obstacle.
Right.
It's not an easy task
Right.
to take, and cases from all across the country has different variations of what is an undue hardship.
Right.
How can you prove it's an undue hardship where you can't eat, you can't afford your medication?
Right.
Some have proven it, but what's more interesting at what I like looking at is stating that it's not a student loan to begin with that's deserving of the protection of the bankruptcy court.
Wow. Wow.
That was a lot.
That was
I know.
Whoa,
That was a lot.
You just gave us a nugget there.
Yeah.
Wow. And I saw your face brighten up because that fighter came out in you.
Well, it's like the thing, if you go to a bank
Yeah.
to get a car and you say, I want to get some money because I want to buy a car. You going to the bank and asking for money to buy a car does not make that loan now a car loan. It's still just money that you asked for. The categorizing of it as a car loan is something that the banks do for their own convenience. Or if I go into a bank and say, I want $50,000, maybe it's to buy a house. That doesn't make it a mortgage or a house loan. It just makes it money that you borrowed. Same with student loan. If you go to Chase Bank or Wells Fargo or Discover, those are some of the bigger student loan providers, and you say, I want $30,000. That in itself doesn't make it a student loan because you use that money to pay for your education.
Wow.
So student loans have a certain mark that keep it qualified, which is different than what a bank would use it as qualifying for a student loan. So when you first get your documents and you can see if it's a note, a promissory note to repay, then that's not a student loan. That's just a promise to repay. versus a student loan that's given by a government entity that has a fixed interest rate. Those are type of loans that are protected by the bankruptcy court because they give you recourse and repayment, they give you terms of repayment, they have fixed, stable interest rates. So that's what a student loan is. So for many people who have these private type of loans, who has loans that they think is public because their school ushered them in through the door,
right.
Those are just promises to repay that can be discharged in bankruptcy.
Wow. And you know, what I love the fact is that you just really broke something so difficult down so easily. You make it seem like, wow, it's ABCs. And the thing that I love about you, Michelle, is that when you're asked to describe or to assist or help someone with that information, you make it simple. And I don't feel stupid. I hope, you know, it's just something like, wow, if someone would have just taught me and told me to do certain things. Can we just take a little step further? I want to talk about these servicing companies. You said there was about 15 of them in the country.
Correct.
Aren't they owned by the federal government?
No, they're not. They are not. So servicing companies are independent companies that make money from servicing your loan. And the way they make their money is actually a conflict of interest between you, the student, and the owner of the student loan. So servicers only get paid if they get extra fees if you're behind. They get extra fees if you do something deficient. They get extra fees if you did not pay the full amount of your student loan. So the perfect example is, let's say your servicer says you owe $500 on your student loan. And you say, oh, I can't afford it. Can I pay you $335 instead? And your servicer will say, I will allow you to pay $335 a month for the next 2 years. And you're so thankful because you're like, that's wonderful.
Right.
I can now pay $335 a month.
Right.
And you religiously pay $335 a month, and you're happy and you're proud, and the servicer is collecting it. But at the end of the 2 years, that servicer has charged that extra $150 that you didn't make payment on the full $500. And now your student loan is even bigger than what it initially was because the servicer made money on you paying less than what was owed on your student loan to begin with.
And she dropped the mic. Boom. What?
And we all do it. We all call
I've done it.
We all do it. We call and say, $600 so much. Can I pay $300? And they'll say, of course, pay $300.
Yeah.
So you pay $300. And then at the end of that term, 2 years, 3 years, however long, your student loan is higher because of all the servicing fees for your failure to pay the full amount owed.
Wow.
It's a negative amortization. I hope I said that
Yes.
right. Negative amortization. Exactly. Where you're paying less, your loan gets more, and in any other industry that's illegal and predatory, but in student loans, no one seems to mind.
Yeah, it is illegal in mortgages. I know
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
Because that's like balloon payments and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
But in student loans, it doesn't seem to be affecting anyone to change that up.
Right. They don't want to change it because the millennials are just going to sit back and not be work worthy because they can't pay any bills. So why even work? Because they're going to take the whole check anyway. Wow.
Yeah, and it can lead to that part. And it was never meant, student loan and government assistance was never meant to be a moneymaker. It was never meant to cripple the very generation that we need to support us in our older age. It was meant to be an implement tool to help people that couldn't quite make all of the payments to college. But where the student loan debt, and we spoke about this before, the student loan debt and blossomed in response in relationship to the colleges asking for more money. So colleges ask for more money, servicers can get more fees for the deficiencies of the repayments and the explosion of the interest rates. So it's just been this monster feeding within each other, which again is on the backs of the most vulnerable, the youngest, the oldest, and
right. And not only that, the students are going to college and they're pledging sororities and fraternities and having a good time and not realizing that, you know what, the boom is getting ready to hit you.
Right.
In a couple of months.
Well, so, and some of these students, I have to say also, if they don't have the benefit of joining a sorority and fraternity, there are now, I understand about 25% of the colleges in the U.S. have food pantries. And these food pantries are to serve the college students that still don't have enough money to eat because their educational loan is so high or their debt to the school is so high that there are now food pantries on the colleges where the kids can go and get some food because they don't have sufficient income.
Wow.
So it's both within the college that they're struggling, and of course, you know, Rae, if you're hungry, you can't focus.
Right.
You know, but at the same time, you're doing this for your family. You might be first generation, and you don't want to disappoint mom and dad. So you're going to do what you can and get a work study and walk across that floor. So it's a trying time right now to be a millennium in college and trying to figure this whole thing out. And we have to be responsible to help them. Right. You know, because these are either our kids or our grandparents. There's people that we love that are being affected. Nephews.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. So listen, what is it? Whew, you just blew my mind with the negative amortization. Yeah. Wow, wow. What do we do? What do we do to combat and discharge student loans?
Well, to discharge a student loan debt, once you get through the basics of the legalese of it, you want to make sure that you have your documents to give to the attorney so they can see what type of documents that you have. Now here's where I said earlier between a difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13. If you were to file an adversary proceeding in a Chapter 7, it's difficult to get those documents that you may need. You might have been out of school for 10 years, for 15 years. Maybe your school closed down. Maybe it's not even functioning anymore. Maybe it was shut down by the state or whatnot. So now you're thinking, well, I went to Drake College maybe or some other college 15 years ago, 20 years. I don't know where to find my documents. I don't even know if the school's still open. So in a Chapter 7, it would be very difficult to challenge some of those student loans. But if you had DOE, Department of Education loans, there's certain ways to discharge some debt if the school in fact closed down. So if a school closed down or if there is other conditions to that school no longer being open, there might be a way to discharge it with the Department of Education where you don't need an adversary. In a Chapter 13, the documents that you need will be provided through a mechanism called a proof of claim. So a proof of claim is documents that a creditor has to provide to show that you owe the debt that they're asking for. So let's say you have a student loan with Navient and you go into a Chapter 13 and you file an adversary proceeding. The Navient would have to provide all of those documents confirming that they actually are the owner of your debt or the servicer of your debt. Wow. So that might be the first time you understand who's servicing, who's owning, what's my interest rate, where's all the accounting been. Right. That's why I like a 13 for these student loans, because they're providing you the documents that you may not have.
Right. And you know, the one thing I like that you said that it's possible, well, let me back up. Do you have to file bankruptcy to discharge your student loan debt?
You do not.
You do not.
But it's probably the more encompassing way to get rid of your student loan debt, because it's dealing with all of your debt. Whatever debt you have, bankruptcy is dealing with all of your debt, credit card debt, mortgages. And bankruptcy court right now is really a force to be reckoned with that's realizing that these student loan debts are a problem, or these student loan debts are predatory. So it's federal court when you're going into bankruptcy. You have amazing and courageous judges that are looking at these student loans and questioning, how do you have the right to ask for $200,000 at 13% interest?
Wow.
Yeah. So in those lights, it's frightening to think of things like that.
And they're asking for, that's a lot. So listen, time has run out. I know. We have to have you back We want you to come back. We want to be a part of what you're doing, a part of that national conversation, and bringing awareness to students, parents, seniors, everyone that's affected by all of this debt. You know, at the Live More with Rae show, you are more than welcome to email us, contact us, please. Michelle and I are willing to talk with you, come and see you, be with you. She has a plethora of information. She has so much information. She made my hair turn gray in the back here. But we are excited about having you, and please stay close to us. We'll stay close to you. We want to do some type of seminar, workshops. We'll get together. We'll get some timing together because we want New York City. We want New Jersey to be a place where student loans isn't an issue. Well, we have the largest debt here, and even the foreclosure issue in New Jersey with the taxes. But we want to be a part of the conversation in our community, and we appreciate you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we just want to say to our audience, thank you for coming. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Email us your questions. I know you have a lot of questions. I know parents, if you're listening, you're probably feeling the brunt of things. You want your student, you want your son, your daughter, niece, nephew, grandchild to be successful, and it's just so much that they have to combat with, plus look for a job, plus get into the industry, not knowing where to go, and just they're so atrophied and sitting on the couch because they just feel so, I wouldn't say worthless, but they just feel like they're just shackled to all of this stuff. So we have the answers. We're a source of resources, and we believe that we can help you be the best you. So remember, live more and fear less. But before we go, parting words from Michelle.
Parting words. Continue to know that everything that you've done going to school and getting your education is worth it. Don't ever think that education is not a worthy goal to achieve, because it is. And the very idea that you went through college and you got a degree, it's worthy, and you shouldn't be upset or shamed or frustrated by the great work that you've done.
Right. And you know what? Don't be afraid to fight back. You know, sometimes you just have to push the envelope and fight back. Don't be afraid to say, no, I'm going to win. And I'm going to win because I'm going to do it the correct way, the legal way. I'm going to ask the right questions. Stop being afraid. You know, I just want, and this is right in my heart, stop being afraid to ask the questions. You know, we bunker down, we lean back, we don't want to, you know, upset the apple cart. The apples are rotten. The cart is coming apart. You got to ask, what do you need to keep it together? What do you need to do to be the greatest you? That's the step you need to take. It doesn't mean taking away from anyone else's life. It means your life purpose. This is what the show is all about, living on purpose, that you can be the person that God has called you to be. So it's time to rise up. It's time to speak back. It's time to do what you need to do. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. Remember, live more, fear less.